Okay. And I'll share when I say I'm sharing. What do you see? Everything is good? I don't hear anybody. I don't see any comments or anything like that. Uh-oh. Maybe I put the wrong one. I just copy paste what you sent. Uh-oh. So let me try it. The link that you sent me, Papu. So we have a couple of minutes. So before we get started, uh, I have I don't know what the first one, the second one is. So all right, so we can put the messages if the whatever issues there are in the live chat. I still have a minute before I get started, so I'll give everybody a minute or two to get started. Okay, that's fine. So we will get started in a minute because there seem to be a few minor issues here and there. So I'll give everybody a minute. It's 3:59. We'll get started at exactly 4 o'clock. So boys, give me a heads up when we're ready to go. Looks like it is 4 o'clock and we can get started. Welcome to session number 3 of our Education Continuums program, a lifetime of education in 52 weeks. As usual, we start each session with the goals, our purpose for doing this, which is basically to learn how to succeed in life. We are all trying to do better at whatever we do so that we can have a better life. Now, what we do depends on the choices we make and the decisions we take. This, in turn, depends on education, which is the knowledge and the skills to apply that knowledge in order to be able to succeed. The better the education, the better our lives. Now, education is not just what we learn in school, but the total sum of what we learn through all aspects of our lives. That's great education, and that's what this education is about. And in our previous 2 sessions, we discussed education itself. We learned the difference between regular education and great education. And we learned that perhaps great education is the path to prosperity. We learned a little bit about freedom, because which is why we initiated this program on July 4th, which is US Independence Day. And to me, perhaps signifies the most freedom there is. Then we talked about money, because it seems like wealth seems to be pretty high on people's minds, and it is obviously something that is very important. That's what makes the world go around, some people think. So we talked about wealth and money, and we discussed credit cards, in the sense that a great way to lose money is by having lots and lots of credit card debt. So we learned about how we lose money, because before you can be wealthy, you got to make sure that you are not poor and that you're not losing money. So we learned about credit cards, and to a lot of people's surprise, we found out how much debt we get ourselves into and how easy it is to lose money. And in fact, the more you lose money, the more you have to make in order to stay afloat. We also learned about inflation, which is a natural way of losing money, which we can't do anything about. And that's why we have to make money. We also spent some time talking about change management and life process, um, which basically showed us what life is really all about. And then we learned a couple of golden lessons. One the session before, one last session. The first lesson was anything ever learned is never lost. And the second session was pay now or pay later. Later is always much more expensive. And we also touched on a big picture about the questions we ask ourselves in a long view. And one of those questions was that I had asked, is God inside or outside? And we said we're going to be discussing that in future sessions, and so on and so forth. So we asked a lot of these questions, a lot of thinking going on, and which is also part of learning to be successful. In today's session number 3, we will kind of apply what we learned in terms of more about money. And this time, unlike last time that we learned how we losing money, we're going to learn how to grow money. We're going to talk about a little bit about interest rates, simple and interest rate and compound rates, because that's the way how fast we lose or gain money, and it is relevant to our discussion about growing money. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about change management and the life process. We're going to look at it again with a little different uh, point of view. And then we're going to have a golden lesson number 3. So that's today's session. More about money. Now, I said we discussed credit cards, how fast we are losing money, and at the rate at which we lose money depends on the interest rate and a few other factors which we don't know about, but the people who are gaining from our losing money understand that very well. So what we have to do is learn to be able to understand it ourselves. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about simple and interest and compound interest rate and simple interest rate, so that we can at least have an idea as to how fast money is getting out of our pocket. More importantly, also how we can gain money at these rates. So it's relevant. Now, so at this point, the best way is for me to quickly share with you a graphic where we can demonstrate this issue. So bear with me while I share the screen so we can talk about it. And here is the screen coming up. I'm getting better at this. Um, it takes see the screen. All right. Let me know when you see the screen. Um, can you see it? You can. Very good. So this is a screen, and you probably just see the PowerPoint, which is here. I'm going to move this a little bit. Oops, these mouse is not that easy to manipulate here. Uh, Pardon me while I go into here. There we go. Okay. So you should see a blank screen which says simple versus compound interest. Yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now, so this is a chart which shows the two lines, the growth for simple interest and growth for compound interest. Now, to some people, it'll be pretty pedantic, but it is relevant for our future discussion. So the blue line shows you that if you are paying interest when you borrow money at simple interest rate, it is at that steady rate. But you see that if it is compound interest, how fast it is growing, which is the reason why credit card companies charge you interest and compound rate, and the banks, when you put money in your saving account and all that, they give you money at the simple interest rate. So that's how you can see it pictorially. But even the brown line, it can be up or even steeper or less steep depending on a few other factors. And it is important to understand those factors. That's what we're going to also be looking at when we are talking about making money for ourselves. So here are some of the factors. The formula at the top looks kind of scary. Basically, it's a rate at which your money grows or your uh, debt grows. Okay. It's a complicated formula, not to worry about it, but that formula is the one that results in this brown line. What is important are those 5 items on the left hand side which affect that line. And that's pretty common sense, so you need to understand it. So A, capital A, is the amount of money you're going to have after a certain period of time of either investing money or borrowing money. P is the initial amount, is the amount which you either invested and borrowed. The bigger the principal amount, the bigger your gain or loss is going to be. R, that's an important one, little r, that's the interest rate. That's the rate at which you're going to pay the money or lose money. Last time we said credit company charge money at 24%, which is a pretty high rate. Inflation is 3%. Savings account right now, bonds and things are paying about between 4 and 5%. So you can see that the interest rate is important, especially if you're going to be getting mortgages and so on and so forth. So that interest rate determines the brown line. Now, that's pretty common and everybody pretty much understands that. The other two are a little bit more tricky and important to understand that. Let's do the T first. T is the number of time periods left. That means how long are you borrowing the money for? Okay, you borrow money for a long period of time. The more money you have to pay. You invest money for a long period of time, the more money you're going to earn. That's pretty straightforward as well. The number of times interest is applied per time period, that's really a very tricky one. So that means how often they actually give you the interest that you earn. So if you invest money, they give you usually interest every quarter. When you borrow money, they calculate this interest much more frequently. Like I mentioned to you before, the credit card companies calculate that interest really, really very frequently, which in fact is daily. They charge you daily. Okay. So those are the factors which are really important to understand in terms of either borrowing money or investing money. That's really what it's all about. When you cut it all down to nitty gritty, ultimately it boils down to two things: the interest rate and the frequency at which you are collecting interest, and the rest of the things are kind of pretty obvious. Every investment, every time a thing, they may have fancy names, but it is about this. So now that we understand this part, we can, this is some of the fundamentals. Now we can about what are the different types of investments that we can do to grow money. I'm making the assumption that it is understood, so I'll repeat it. Thing, the way to grow money is invest it. When you invest money, it grows. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying when you lend money to somebody, okay, just like when you borrow money, it costs you. Just like when you lend money, it costs somebody else and they pay you. Okay? Now, so that's the most important thing to understand. Investment is basically lending money. Now, there are some other constraints associated with the borrowing and lending, and some nuances in terms of other beliefs and issues, but that's a totally separate issue outside the scope of this discussion. So, now that we understand it's all about borrowing or lending money, now the question is, okay, hey, it is great for me to lend money to people so that I can get interest, or call it, I can earn money for letting them use my money. Think of it, I think of it as rent rather than as interest. Okay. So think of it as renting money to somebody. So the question is, hey, who should I rent money to? Okay, there are different ways. Obviously, you can get a friend and you can lend them if they want to borrow it. Now, there's a kind of tricky if you're friend and family. It gets tricky. You don't want to charge them interest and blah blah. So that's not a good idea. They say, hey, don't get families involved in money. So who else can I lend money to? Well, lucky for us, there are fixed things where we can lend money to. Okay, those vehicles for lending money are called bonds, the most common ones. Or even more basic than that is savings money. Saving. So if you have a savings account in a bank, you can say, hey, bank, I want to open a savings account. That's just a fancy way of saying I want to put money in your account. I'm going to lend you the money so you can use it so that later on you can give me more money. The bank says, okay, that's how they started. In fact, all right, that was the principal function of the bank, to look after your money and to grow you. Usually, if it is any worthwhile, if you remember our discussion from inflation, your savings rate, interest rate that you get from the savings account should be greater than the inflation rate. Nowadays, that's not really true. So that's not a great investment by putting money in the savings account, right? But it is better than putting in a checking account, and definitely better than putting the money under your mattress. So that's the most basic, safe kind of form of lending money that you can do. And you can look at the interest rates, and I think they're about 2%, something like that. Interest rate, inflation is about 3%. So that's not a great deal, but it's better than putting under your mattress. The next investment is similar to that. It's called bonds, fixed income. Now, bonds are basically lending money to not just banks, but some other institutions who want to borrow money, who are reliable because they have to pay you the money back. See, one of the problems with lending money is fine. Somebody can say, I'll give you a lot of interest, but if they never give you the bloody money back, then the interest ain't going to cover it. So it's important. That's called the risk factor. So it is important to understand that, hey, how do we lend money so that you can be sure we're going to get it back and we're going to get the interest on top of it so that it grows. So one of the most safest form of lending is called the Treasuries United States, or in common terms, another way of saying that is sovereign debt. Sovereign debt means it used to be in the olden days when you used to lend money to the kings and queens and all that stuff. The sovereign, it's called the sovereign debt now. That means you're lending money to the government, right? So the U.S. government money from a whole bunch of people, you, me, and everybody else, by selling what they call treasury bonds. If you remember, in one of the sessions and one of our promotions, we have shown this chart where you see the United States debt growing at a certain rate. In fact, it's about $35 trillion right now, and which means the United States government owes 34 trillion plus whatever dollars, which means everybody in the United States owes that much money. You divide it by the population, and you get about $103,000 that and increasing that each American owes to somebody. I owe $103,000. For what? That's another story. So the reason a lot of time we've talked about the younger generation is upset and concerned. Why? Because of this reason. So we got to figure out a way how to make money. Well, now that's a kind of an oxymoron here. On one hand, I'm saying, hey, we are in debt. On the other hand, I'm saying that's the way to grow money is to lend money. So we buy treasury bonds. So I can buy treasury bonds. You can buy treasury bonds, and bonds pay you interest. Now, if you remember the chart that I was looking at when I showed you the interest rate, there was a principal, there's amount, and the period of time. For how long do you lend the money to? Usually it's 5 years, 10 years. You could be 1 year, 6 months, or whatever it is. Usually the 5 years treasury bonds. Okay. So treasuries, that means what? I am lending money to the government for 5 years. Let's say I lend them $1,000 at what rate? Right now, I think it's about 5 point something percent, which means that every quarter they're going to calculate an interest based on 5%, something like that. That doesn't mean they're going to give me 5% every quarter. That means they're going to give me 1.25% of my total investment every quarter as dividends, if you like, or interest payment. Is called coupon, right? The coupon is 1.25 every quarter, 5% per year, and that's the money I get every month. This kind of investment, by the way, is also called fixed income because I am getting a fixed income every quarter. Okay? All right. And then after 5 years, I'm going to get my money back. That's pretty decent. Okay. And if I'm getting 5%, inflation is 3%, so I'm a little ahead of the ball game. I am growing money. That's a good thing. Now, you might say, okay, then why doesn't everybody buy bonds? Well, because there are other entities which give you higher interest rate. So if I don't want to give money to the US government, I could lend money to what they call municipal bonds. Municipal bonds are bonds which are money borrowed by your local cities or small towns and all that. Why? Because they want to do some kind of a big project, build a subway, railroad, build a school, a dam, or whatever. All right. They need money for that. So what they do is they borrow money from the people and they float bonds and they give you that interest. Now, they are not as safe as the government, right? So they have to pay you a little bit more interest. So municipal bonds might give you 6% interest. Okay, but depending on which bond it is, you have to weigh the risk factor against um, the money that you're getting. Municipal bonds are usually pretty safe as well, and that's fine. Now you can move up, increase the risk a little bit, get more in return, right? So the next one up are, you might say, utility companies like electric companies and gas companies, and those companies, they borrow money for big projects, for exploration and so on and so forth, and they give you a little higher interest rate, and that's how it goes further up. The worst kind of bond that you can buy, which gives you the highest amount of interest, are called junk bonds. And it's not a accidental name. They are called junk bonds because that's exactly what they are. They are basically junk, which means what? They have a huge risk, and but they give you lots of money. So you hope that by the time they stay in business, before they go out of business or whatever else it is, that you will have an earn enough interest at a small rate so that you will not be losing money at the end. That's not a sports game. Bigger the gamble, the worse it is. So basically, that's what is called fixed income bonds. Now, types of fixed incomes are called mutual funds, things like that. Just a fancy way of saying lend money in a different way so that you have less risk, minimize your risk, maximize your return, and you grow your money. When you all cut it down, it's down to simple thing: lending money so that you can earn interest, or borrowing money so that you lose money. That's common sense, which is why Shakespeare said, say, don't borrow money. You borrow money, you're in a big doo-doo. Unless it's really, really essential or it is manageable debt. We talked about that a little bit next time. I know I keep saying it again and again because it's important. Now, what other way of growing money is there? There is actually a faster way of growing money than buying income, by doing fixed income like bonds and mutual funds and so on and so forth. They're called equities or stocks or share. What does that mean? That means you are buying shares of a company. Why? So that when a company makes a profit, then you will share in the profit of that company. That profit is called dividend in some ways. Okay. Now you might say, ask, hey, how does my money grow faster with buying stock? So this is how it works. Imagine you set up a company to sell widgets. Okay, you invest, I don't know, whatever amount of money, and you guys work hard, you create these widgets, and you sell these widgets. When you sell these widgets, the revenue comes in, you take out the cost, you get the profit. The more widgets you make, the more profit you make. The more profit you make, the more you get to share. It's really that simple, right? So the company, when they're starting up, they sell stock so that people invest money, they buy the stock of the company, and initially they're probably not making any profit because they're just starting up. So it takes a little while for it to grow. But once it starts growing, then starts making lots of money. Okay. And as it grows, you share in the profit. So therefore, the amount of money you make depends on how profitable the company is and how fast it is growing. That's one way of doing things. Also, when a company is making a lot of profit, then the owning that company becomes very desirable. So somebody else comes along and say, hey, I can buy this stock of this company, right? And at a higher rate than what you buy the stock for. So that's what's happening in the stock market every day. People are gambling and say, hey, this company, is this company going to make more profit than the other company that I own stock of? Okay, if it's going to make more profit, then I'm going to buy that company. One of the most profitable companies right now on the stock market is Apple. Okay, I'm not saying it's the only one. It is one of the very profitable company. So you buy Apple stock, it growing and growing and growing because more people are buying more and more and more, and therefore it is. So you might say, hey, if that's the case, why somebody else not why is somebody selling the Apple stock and buying something else? Well, because some other companies might be growing faster and therefore it makes sense to do them. But that's a very tricky business, requires a lot of analysis and so on and so forth to find out. But the fact of the matter is, it is important to know how it works. So I will share with you real quick how I do the investment. Now, I don't think I'm smart. Okay. The people out there who are buying and selling stocks day in, day out, especially day traders, oh man, they are super smart. They got a ton of research and they know so much about these companies they're buying and selling. Oh, I don't even have the time for that. Yet, I invest and knock on wood, I make money. You might say, hey, how's that? Very simple. Is part of learning how to succeed. Okay, there are lots of different ways of doing it. There is no fixed method. So if somebody says, I'll show you how to be successful in being a stock trader, that's not what I want to listen to. I know how to succeed. And one of the things about knowing how to succeed is to know your own limitations and things. So I know I'm not smart as all these guys. So I'm not going to just go and say, hey, I'm going to go pick this stock and I'm going to buy it. So what do? This is what I do. It's very simple. I go to the internet. I know one thing, which is that Warren Buffett is one of the smartest investor of all time. Okay. In fact, he has a company which invests money. And if you want for him that he invests money on, which is growing, because everybody knows he's so successful, he's so good at it because he got millions of people doing research on him. And whatever his bloody philosophy is for knowing how to pick the stock, it works. So he makes money all the time. In fact, so here's this company where you can say, hey, I want to be part of your group. The guy say, okay, no problem. It's called Berkshire Hathaway. And you can be part of the Berkshire Hathaway and join in his investment. The only problem is because it is so damn good, one share of Berkshire Hathaway cost over $600,000. One share of Apple, which is pretty expensive, is about 400. It goes up and down. Okay. There are other companies like Heinz and so on and so forth, Bank of America, they trade in the about $40-50 range. So you get an idea. If you're successful, people want to share with you. So obviously, buying a share of Berkshire Hathaway, unless you're a millionaire or billionaire, you're not buying those stocks. You understand, of course. If you're a millionaire, you can buy the stock. Your money grows super, super fast. That's why the rich keep getting richer and so on and so forth. Okay, so I am not that smart and I am not that rich, but I do have some money that I can invest. So what do? Back to the internet. I go and say, hey, let me see what are the top 10 companies that Berkshire Hathaway's invest in. Top of the list, I think, was, maybe still is, Apple, Bank of America, I think Bank of Mellon, Heinz, few American Express. They are some of his favorite ones. Okay, this I'm not telling you some secret. You can go to the internet, find out for yourself, and it changes. So you want to look at it recently. So there are 10 of those stocks. I go through those 10 stocks, and I pick 3 that I think I kind of like and do a little bit more research on it, and I buy those. And then every few months, I go look and say, hey, how much money am I making? Usually they're making money, and if they're making money, I'm fine. depending on how I feel about them down the road, depending on how he feels about them down the road. So if he was owning a lot of Apple and then he started selling Apple and buying some other stuff, okay, I'm going to sell Apple and buy some other stuff. It really is that simple. Okay. You can do that. So, um, one of the ways to grow money faster is stocks and shares. But keep in mind, word of caution, if it grows faster, it can lose faster as well. That is the reason why you have to be careful as to where do you invest the money. Okay. And unless it's fixed income, which is reasonably safe, income, mutual funds, especially index funds, they are reasonably safe investment, and that's for future growth, and that's where you can invest the money. If you're going to stocks and shares, usually those are the companies you want to be prepared to lose money if you're going to get into that game. There are other forms of fancy Duda investment. They're called foreign exchange. You will get people trying to tell you things, and Bitcoin and stock options, all kinds of fancy ways. Not for common people. Okay. I stay away from them. I don't want to do them because I'm not that smart. Okay. And I don't want to be. I'm pretty okay with this basic stuff. So, those are the basic ways in which you can grow money. And the better you understand, the better you are able to take advantage of that. And some of the stuff that we discussed was for that purpose. Now, from time to time, we'll be talking about more about these type of investments. And if we will have questions, we can deal with them and all that. But this is not about, hey, how to become a super good investor. This is about common people like myself, how to make sure I don't lose money and I'm successful in making some extra money. This is not about getting rich quick. This is not about anything else. It's about how to be successful in life. Okay. So that's that. And the better we understand what we're doing, the better we are able to take advantage of it. This is one of the things. I'm going to take a 30-second break to take a sip of my cup of tea, and then we're going to talk about this other thing that we discussed last time called the life cycle. In the meantime, if you have questions, you can post them up there and talk about it, and then I'll come back in about 30 seconds and we'll discuss the life process we discussed last time. Okay, there we go. Take a sip. Now let me also have a quick look, see if there are any questions that people have asked. Session. Hang on, if you have questions, that nature is beautiful information, wonderful. So thank you for that directly. Da, 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 da. Okay, I don't see too many questions in there, so we are good. Am I still sharing the screen? I don't know. Okay, so we are going to go back to, okay, sharing the screen as well. Guys, do you see my, just, it's on my machine here. Am I sharing something? I am now, right? Okay, all right. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. Let me stop sharing, and I don't know how to do this. Okay. Okay. I think I might have stopped sharing, right? Yeah. All right, cool. All right, there are no questions, so we can get started on the second part. I've taken my sip of my tea, and so last lesson we talked about that we want is better life, and you know, for most people, it means basically getting what you want, right? And you decide what you want, and then if you get what you want, you get a better life. Basically, that's what it's all about. And we looked at this chart, and usually most people translate that what I want is more money, acquire wealth. So they set their goal because they think getting a better life means having more money. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying some people think that way. And that's why a lot of people are looking to get wealthy. That's one way of looking at it. Everybody's entitled to do what they want. Now, and we looked at this chart last time, and which we call the life process. And I got a sense that we will look at it and say, oh my God, there's Joe again talking about this fancy Duda screen. He loves these PowerPoints and diagrams and all that, and just a bunch of bumbo jumbo. In fact, I want to tell you something. That chart that I shared with you, therein lies the secret to success. So now that I've told you this, let's look at that chart again slightly differently with that in mind to understand, hey, how come that silly looking chart looks like some fancy mumbo jumbo power flow chart be the secret to success? So let me share the screen again and see if we can look at this secret of success and understand why it is. I'm going to give you minutes to get started. I'm going to dilly-dally and wait for somebody to tell me if you see the screen which says Great Education Continuum, and at the bottom right-hand corner it says Life Process. So it should be there now, I hope, and you can see. Process works and good. So this is similar to what we did last week. It won't hurt to repeat it again. We're going to look at it a little differently and then try to understand why this is your secret to success. So it all starts with what we want. So most important thing is we want to understand what is it that we want. If we don't know what we want, then the rest of it is a waste of bloody time. Then once we know what we want, then that has to turn into some kind of a goal that you can actually achieve. I want to be the king of England. That's a great desire. Uh, in order to be able to get to the king of England, it's not a very good goal because it's not happening. So forget that. On the other hand, not for me, but for my children or somebody like say, hey, I want to be the president of the United States. Hey, okay. So if that's what they desire, then they have to set the goal. The goal has to be, I need to win the election of the government. Okay, then you have to do something like that. But most people want to have a more realistic, much more down to earth goal on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't mean you can only have one goal. You can have many goals. So the most important thing is to understand what you want and then to find a goal that kind of matches that desire. In other words, a goal that is going to help you accomplish that. Okay. Okay. Then once you have a goal, now you have to do something about it. Just having a goal ain't going to do it. It reminds me of a joke. There was a guy, he went to God and said, hey, God, I'm praying every day. Sometimes I'm praying 3 or 4 times a day and I'm begging and as best as I can do it every day. I'm not winning the bloody lottery. The God said, hey, if you want lottery, praying is just part of it. You got to do something. At least buy the stupid lottery. It's the same kind of thing. You got to do something. So if you have a desire, you want a goal, you got to do something. Now, what does that mean? Do what? In order to do something, you have to put some resources into it. The only resources most of us have is what? Our time, money, knowledge, expertise, and basically that's about it. Okay? But just having those things and doing ain't going to get to the result. Why? Because there are obstacles in the way of achieving the goal that you set out to do. And some of them are really real obstacles, and that require resources as well. So that has to be taken into account before you can go anywhere achieving your goal. If that wasn't enough, then there are what we call these artificial goals. These are goals or constraints, obstacles, which really are not in your way, but they have to be overcome. So in some ways those are the easiest one to eliminate because they are pretty much in your head. You can just decide, hey, I'm not going to counting them, I'm going to ignore them, and bingo, you're good to go. Okay, but nevertheless you have to be aware of what they are in order to achieve the goal. How do you achieve the goal? You do all those things, action happens, and as a result of your actions, overcoming all the obstacles, the real and artificial, and putting in your resources, you get the result. Are you successful? Yet. Because, first of all, if you get the result, you have to make sure that the result matches the goal. Okay? So, if you said, hey, in order to be successful, I got to run, whatever my desire is, I got to run 2 miles in, I don't know, 7 minutes. And you do all those things and you run, and hey, you run your 2 miles, but it wasn't in 7 minutes, in 9 minutes. Did you reach your goal? No. So that's not success. Even if you did that, and whatever your purpose for doing those 2 miles was, if that doesn't match the desire that you had, you didn't succeed. So you did all of that, and if it didn't match, you didn't succeed. So what do you got to do? You got to make some changes. Doing the same thing again ain't going to do it. So you got to make some more changes, go back and do it, and then same thing. If it matches and your goal and the desire are compatible, you have succeeded. That is the definition of success. The good news is you are the one who gets to decide whether you succeed or not. Why? Because you are the one who desire it is. You are the one who are setting the goal. You are the one who are putting your resources. You are the one who are identifying the constraints, both artificial and real. You are the one who are feeling the pain of the action. You are the one who are supposed to be comparing those results and doing this whole process. Therefore, you are the one who determining your success or failure. So you might say, hey, if it is that simple, how come so many people are having so much trouble? I'll tell you why. One, most people don't really understand this process. They might kind of instinctively do, but they don't. Even if they do understand, maybe they're not clear about their own desires. Maybe they think they want something, they may really not want something. Then there is more confusion. They think in order to get what I want, the goal that I'm setting may not match the goal. It is for that reason many people, they spend a lifetime trying to pursue a career, becoming a doctor or da 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 da. And you hear them and say, hey, after 5 years, the guy was doing this very successful lawyer, but he says, screw this, I'm not doing this. I'm going to go start a farm someplace or a winery. Why? Because his desire did not match the goal. Very inefficient, right? It took him a long time not to succeed. Now he's going to go back and try to succeed again. So it's really important for right get go. Make sure your next desire, your desire, whatever it is, and your goals are compatible. And then that's just one piece of it. And then you got to do all of this process, and you are the one who has to take responsibility for it. One of the biggest reasons for people's failure is because they make somebody else responsible. They blame other people, they depend on other people. Oh, this guy didn't do this, that didn't do it. No. You want to be successful? If it is, if good happens, you done it. If bad happens, you done it. Everybody else is there as part of resources, constraints, artificial constraints, or whatever. Nobody should be doing the actions. You and only you are the ones who are responsible for the actions. It's really that simple. If you lose money because you did something, wow, nobody's fault. Don't blame somebody else. You know, you are responsible. You have the ability to be able to do it. So, one of the secrets of success is ownership, to be able to own everything. If you blame somebody else, right away, Houston, we got a problem towards success because we are not taking ownership of it. Now, I'm sure people have said all of these things in different times and different places, but this chart is the one that puts in perspective. I don't know about anybody else, but I know I came across this chart, I don't know how many years ago, and it is ingrained in me. Every single thing that I do, it goes through this process in my head. Little decisions add up to big decisions. Do this like that. If I'm buying a car, not it is. If I am, no matter what I'm doing, I am constantly, I'm buying a car. Okay, I feel like, okay, let's go look for a Mercedes. And I said, what the, whoa. Why am I doing a Mercedes for? There was a time maybe I wanted to buy a Mercedes. Now, well, Mercedes is a big name. No. Why do I want to buy a car? So I analyze that. That's my desire. Then I compare, then find the goal. Then I go resources, all that wonderful stuff. Okay. Drives people crazy who are involved with me about this stuff. But doesn't matter because that's my way of making sure I succeed. I do that, promise you, cross my heart, hope to die in almost everything that I do. This is what it is. The better you understand this chart, the better you understand all its nuances, and there are plenty of them, really lots of them. Then this is good. Okay. Now, this one last moment. I got a feeling people are calling me to tell me that I'm maybe going over too much. That's fine. See this Mobius strip? The Mobius strip is the one which is part of our logo, and this and that and the other. That is there on a purpose because what we do is built around that. And we'll have another long discussion about the Mobius strip. The only point that is worth making right now is that what it means is that something that is good for you now may very be the thing that is bad for you later on. That's this whole conundrum about the Mobius strip, about this infinity symbol, about inside outside. That is a very important part of life that most people don't understand, get confused with it, and that's why it leads to a lot of failure. Okay, so with that said, what I want to say about this chart is this is the secret to success, and embrace it. Print it out if you want, plaster it all over the board if you want to learn to be successful. But better still, ingrain it in your head, understand it, live it, and I promise you, this will help you. At least for sure, it has helped me. Might even help you be successful. So we'll talk more and more about it, refer to it, and example after example of this as we go along. But enough for this session. Then in about 30 seconds, I'm going to give you a chance to ask any questions. I'm going to go and shut this stupid phone, and then I will come back and we'll share the life lesson number 3 for you. Give me 30 seconds. And I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so um, I'm sorry, I kind of get carried away some my every now and again with these things here, but so I kind of hinted on this lesson number three already, but in terms of this decision making process and everything else, one of the most important lessons I learned a long time ago, and I teach my kids, especially when it applies to math itself. It certainly applies to math, but applies to everywhere. And it is lesson is called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm sure you have heard of it many different ways. But basically, what it boils down to is when you are making decisions, especially when you're going through this life process, uh, in there, simplify everything. Each, if you have lots of constraints, identify them, eliminate them, because you want to make your decision making process simple. Everything has to be simplified. Now, unfortunately, the problem with simplification is that it's not that easy to do, because there are people, especially those who are trying to take advantage of you, who deliberately complicate things for you. They want to make it simple. And in one of the blogs, a few blogs, in fact, we've talked about the shell game. The shell game is a great example of people trying to make things complicated for you, because that's the way they get you to do the wrong decisions. Okay. So if you want to go look at the blog, there are a few blogs that talk about the shell game, and I was specifically talking about the shell game in terms of elections, of the US elections. Okay. That's the biggest shell game going on right now in the world. Okay. Um, I mean, basically, shell game is when I tell you something to distract you from something else. Okay. And whatever they tell you, the shoutest the most is usually the stuff which is what is being used to distract you. So when I hear elections and I hear about Donald Trump, the moment when I hear make America great again, red flags go up of the wazoo. Why? Because that's what the distraction is. It's like when they're trying to kill the bull, they put this little red thing and want to follow it. That's the same kind of an idea. Okay. We are the bull, and no, America is plenty great. In fact, anything else, those who think they are trying to make America great again, they are the ones who are trying to mess it up. And there are hopefully enough people who understand that, and hopefully more people understand that and focus on it and ignore that. Because basically, I mean, for me, keep it simple is very simple as far as elections are concerned. All I want to know is who is going to get me deeper in debt. Right now, number one problem for every American should be, oh my God, I am in big doo-doo. I owe this $103,000. Okay. I need to find somebody. Unfortunately, I have no choice, because we give whoever the election person is, we give them the keys to our treasury. I want to elect somebody who is not going to rob me even more and get me in deeper debt. It really is that simple. Okay. Because guess what? If the government owes money, you owe money through your taxes. You have no choice. So I got to make sure. So it's really that simple. And all my analysis tell me whenever the Republicans are in power, the debt goes up. When the Democrats are power, that goes up too. So in case of Democrats, it goes up higher. Now, number one. Number two, when the debt goes up, the other question you want to ask is, okay, I'm borrowing money. What the hell am I doing with this stupid money? Oh, what is the US government doing that money? I'm sorry. Unfortunately, some of it is useful. A lot of it doesn't make sense. So we, United States government, we give aid to Israel, God knows how much money. Okay. Now, in some cases, aid is good. We should be community, we should be helping country and all that. But we should understand what the hell we're doing it for. We're giving all this aid because it's supposed to be to help Israel. But that aid, what is it doing? They're using that to do the very same thing that happened to them. They're committing genocide. They're killing all these poor people. Whatever the justification is. My bottom line is, this discussion not about Israel or anything like that. This is about our money, what is happening to it. And so all you want to do is understand, keep it simple. Don't get distracted by all this other fancy, all these experts come and talk about this and that and the other. All they do is confuse the issue. It's very simple. I want to know who's going to charge me more money and what the hell is going to happen to my money. It's that simple. And I'm not saying, hey, Democrats are way better than the Republicans, but at this particular point in time, the prospect of Republicans, most of them now become a bunch of crooks come together. At one time, there used to be a great party. I used to belong to it, but now it has been hijacked. So, sorry, it's nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It has nothing to do with the people. It has to do with their actions. For me, at the moment, the election of Donald Trump and his merry men is going to be harmful to me. And no matter what, alternative most likely is better. And despite all his blah, 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 blah shortcomings for Biden, it's not as bad as it is. Yeah, if we could find a better solution, that'll be great. And that's what we should be doing for every election. In fact, the day after the election, we should be thinking about, hey, who can we find who is going to be not like these other bozos taking advantage of the poor, but who the right person is to do the right job. Anyway, that's our job, to interview these people. I'm afraid we're not doing a very good job. So maybe we need to learn how to successfully interview people for this job of president. Anyway, that's my rant and rave about elections and this and that and the other. I have gone way over my time. Unfortunately, I do that. Each lesson I'm trying to get better and do less and less of it. So thank you for joining us. Just a few things, next session, we talk a little bit more about money, in the sense that, hey, we talked about how to lose money. We talked about how to make money, but guess what? You can't do either of those things if you don't have any to begin with. It's called disposable income. So before we can lose money or if we can gain money, we got to have some to begin with. So where does that come from? Great question. That's what we're going to be talking about next lesson. And then we're going to talk about a little bit more about the life process. And maybe I'll give you another golden lesson and maybe a little bit more rant and rave about what's happening in the real world and how it affects us. And with that, thank you for joining. Again, my 3 requests for you. I would love some feedback. Invite as many people as you can, sharing the thing here if you think this is helpful, and whatever. And let's come together and help each other succeed, which is the motto of Lifebahn. So all you got to do is follow Lifebahn. Autobahn, road for cars. Lifebahn, road for life. We call it Lifebahn, the path to prosperity. There lies in the secret to success. Have a wonderful day. I will see you next week, same time, same place, and hopefully a little bit getting better each time. Thank you. Bye. Let's see if there are any questions. Anybody, any questions? I don't see any, so we are good. And we'll take it from there. End stream.